Hello and welcome to our Saturday, March 5, 2022 program. This is Shimelis Gebremichael with UMD news package for today. We invite you all to stay with the program, and for your feedbacks, please use our email address newstips2020umd@gmail.com. UMD extensively works in understanding, measuring, and doing matters. Our news team attempts to update you with the latest in Ethiopia, the Horn, Africa, and the world in general. Any of your support, including the provisions of news tips, comments, questions, and suggestions, are always welcomed. Before we jump into our news package, here are the headlines for the major news for the day. Ethiopia calls for restraint in Ukraine crisis. UN Rights Forum picks ex-ICC prosecutor to lead Ethiopia abuses investigation. With world attention on Ukraine, Nile Dam conflict escalates. We will see this story in more detail. Now, we will move into providing more information on these and other items. As we always say, please do not forget to like and share our programs and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also view the programs live on other platforms like Facebook. And now we will start our first part of the program with some news brief. First up is about the days of the fourth Patriarch of Ethiopia. Fourth Patriarch of Ethiopia, Abune Merkorios, reportedly passed away. The fourth Patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, Abune Merkorios, reportedly passed away on Thursday, March 3, 2022. It has been a week since the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church announced that the fourth Patriarch was in hospital in Addis Ababa. The nature of the illness of His Holiness was unspecified. Abune Merkorios was in exile for nearly a decade. His Holiness was never observed providing any remarks on developments in the country, including on issues affecting the Ethiopian Church. Abune Merkorios returned to Ethiopia back in 2018 after the split within the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church that has been concluded. UMD wishes all the followers to pick up his blessings while his families get comfort. Ethiopia calls for restraint in Ukraine crisis. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has called for restraint in the Ukraine conflict, noting his country's own suffering after a year of war. The statement notably did not condemn Russia for invading its neighbor. Many countries over the past week have condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Ethiopia refrained from joining the chorus Thursday, issuing an official statement in which it called for restraint from both parties in the Ukraine crisis. The statement from the office of the Prime Minister said Ethiopia is concerned by what it termed the escalation of the rhetoric that is intensifying the conflict. It is to be recalled that Eritrea, the great ally of the incumbent government of Ethiopia, is the only country in the United Nations which refrained from condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which may lead to further escalations or sanctions and hostilities of relations with the Western countries. UN Rights Forum picks ex-ICC prosecutor to lead Ethiopia abuses investigation. The UN Human Rights Council has picked the former chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court to lead a panel investigation violations of human rights in the conflict in northern Ethiopia. The Council voted in December to establish an independent investigative commission to investigate alleged violations by all sides and to identify perpetrators with a view to accountability. In its recent statement, the Council said Fatua Bansonda, a Gambian national who was chief prosecutor at the ICC between 2012 and 2021. Karibeti Murungi of Kenya, and Stephen Ratner of the US are the remaining two members. Kari is currently serving as the Bruno Sima Collegiate Professor of Law at the University of Michigan Law School, while Stephen works as transitional justice process, women's human rights, gender, constitutionalism, and governance. The Council noted that the panel will establish the facts and circumstances surrounding the alleged violations and abuses, collect and preserve evidence to identify those responsible where possible. It will also make such information accessible and usable in support of ongoing and future accountability efforts. It was indicated in the statement that the team will brief the Council during its mid year session and present a written report towards the end of the year. UN says nutrition supplies were flown into northern Ethiopia. A UN spokesman said on Thursday, March 3, 2022, supplies to treat severe acute malnutrition in young children were flown into the northern Tigray region in Ethiopia, the first time since mid December. The chief spokesman for UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Stephanie Dujarric, said the move has contributed to a limited expansion in medical services. However, the spokesperson noted a lack of truck fuel limited the distribution of medical supplies to only some health facilities. There was no distribution of food aid reported from February 17 to 23 because supplies and fuel nearly ran out. Stefani also noted that humanitarian colleagues informed them that the situation in northern Ethiopia remains extremely concerning. During the past week, some 18,000 people received food assistance in the accessible areas affected by the conflict. Some health services, water trucking, and household items were provided to those recently displaced. There is a need to scale up assistance. According to the chief spokesperson, overall, the number of people targeted for food assistance in Afar has grown to more than 620,000 people, and the last aid round was in mid October, assisted about 530,000 people. Dudarich also indicated that there are extremely concerning levels of malnutrition that continue to be reported in all three northern Ethiopia. War and disputes, including drone attacks, are still in progress in the country, which is complicating peace efforts and aid distributions. Meanwhile, a new report highlights Tigray atrocities and says Ethiopia could face famine. Refugees International, a global organization advocating for displaced and stateless people, said in a report released March 3 that the humanitarian situation in Tigray was abysmal, with atrocities like war crimes displacing at least 2.5 million people inside and out of the country. Sarah Miller, a senior fellow with Refugees International, said in the report that the Ethiopian government has blocked virtually all food and medical shipments into Tigray, using food as weapon of war. With starvation days mounting each day, she said in the report, and nearly 900,000 people in famine conditions. According to Catholic News Service, there are great fears that the current situation in Ethiopia will mirror the Great Famine of the 1980s, when more than 1 million people died of starvation. The world should continue to be shocked at what is taking place in Tigray. Man made famine is something that should outrage all of us, including people of faith, Miller told Catholic News Service in an interview while underscoring the role of faith group in responding to the crisis and refugees. He said religious leaders inside Tigray and around the world have raised their voices in support of those suffering because of the humanitarian blockade. He also stressed the need to continue speaking out as much as they are able to and sharing information with their communities about what is going on. One shot dead as police arrest gang captured on CCTV robbing Ethiopian diplomat. One person was shot dead as operatives from the Crime Intelligence Directorate and Flying Squad unit pursued members of the gang captured on CCTV cameras robbing an Ethiopian diplomat in a broad daylight. In a video that has since gone viral on social media, Dawit Kasa, a diplomat with the Ethiopian embassy in Uganda, was targeted by a gang that was traveling on boda bodas, bicycles and motorcycle taxis commonly found in East Africa. In an incident that happened on February 25, 2022, along Price Charles Drive in Kololo, Kasa, who was carrying a bag on a boda boda, was sandwiched by the gang that intercepts the motorcycle he was moving on and beat him. Whereas he thought refugees from nearby boda bodas who he thought could help. These also pounced on him, and eventually his bag that contained 2.8 million shilling, laptop, and phones were stolen before the gang members jumped on their boda bodas and vanished in thin air. UMD gathered this story from Nile Post news agency. Kenya frees over 103 illegal immigrants, illegal migrants from Ethiopia. Kenyan authorities have released 139 Ethiopian who were being held for entering the country illegally, according to Ethiopian ambassador to Kenya, Meles Alam Takie. The Ethiopians were released from 6 different police cells around the capital, Nairobi. The Ethiopians had been held in Kuambu, Gikiri, Pangani, Jogo, Buruburu, and Dondora custody facilities for a period ranging from 1 to 9 months. Ambassador Alam said that the prisoners were sent back home after they were released on pardon grant. He, however, neither disclosed the circumstances of the release nor mentioned when they were freed and when they returned home. The diplomat did not respond to the East Africa's queries on this same story. The source of this story is the popular East African newspaper, The Citizen. We will now move to the one story that we've chosen to present to you in more details for today. That is regarding the Nile or the Jerd. With world attention in Ukraine, Nile Dam conflict escalates. If there is one topic that grabs the attention of the world this time around, it is Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Pressing issues including the war crisis in Ethiopia, the famine in East Africa, and the other global geopolitics look out of sight. Over the last 2 weeks, Mohammed Said of Al Monitor, for example, is worried as to how the lucrative Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam issue is put aside. Said has produced a wonderful piece analyzing this issue. UMD has looked into this compilation and present to you, our listeners and viewers, as follows. It seems international momentum to solve the dispute between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia of the operation of the giant and controversial hydroelectric dam is warning in light of the West's preoccupation with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. On February 20, Said explains, Ethiopia announced the partial start of electricity production for the first time from the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Gerd. The move, according to Said, was condemned by the two downstream countries, Egypt and Sudan, which have repeatedly denounced Ethiopia's unilateral measures in the matters related to filling and operating the dam. The two countries describe the start of power generations as a violation of the declaration principles signed by the three countries in 2015, which prohibits the signatories from taking unilateral measures regarding the use of the Nile River's water. On February 21, Egypt sent a letter to the UN Security Council rejecting Ethiopia's start of operation of the dam in the absence of a legally binding agreement with the downstream countries governing the filling and operations of process. A day earlier, the Egyptian Minister of Irrigation, Mohammed Abdel Ati, had sent the same letter to the Ethiopian and Sudanese counterparts. Paul Sullivan, an resident senior fellow with the Atlantic Council's Global Energy Center, told Al Monitor that it would be difficult to get the powers involved with these to focus back on the Nile issue. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is very bad timing for many issues that needed to move forward. In the summer of 2021, Cairo and Khartoum succeeded in putting the Gerd issue on the UN Security Council agenda, despite Ethiopia's rejection of this step. Subsequently, a statement by the President of the Security Council urged the three countries to continue their talks under the auspices of the African Union, which has since thought to resume negotiation, but to no avail. Talks held under the auspices of the AU since June 2020 have failed to reach a tripartite agreement on the filling and operation of the Gerd. Cairo and Khartoum demanded Addis Ababa to stop filling the dam's reservoir until an agreement is reached. The tripartite negotiations have been frozen since early April 2021 when the parties meeting in Kinshasa. For more than a decade, Egypt and Sudan have failed to persuade Ethiopia to agree to a legal agreement regulating the process of filling and operating the dam and its method of operation during drought years with low rainfall. This will reduce the amount of water that Addis Ababa will release towards the two downstream countries. Egypt and Sudan also demanded an effective and binding mechanism to settle future disputes, while Ethiopia insists on an agreement that concludes non-binding guidelines. Ethiopia says that the $5 billion dam, whose construction is more than 80% complete and which is the largest in Africa, is vital for its economic development and for providing energy. But Egypt sees it as a serious threat to its supply of Nile water, as it depends almost entirely on it to meet its needs of fresh water. As for Sudan, it wants guarantee regarding its safe and appropriate operations to preserve its own dams, including the Rosairs Dam, the largest Sudanese dam. Dear viewers and listeners, you can read the full article from Al Monitor's February 2nd edition. Well, with that, we come to an end of the news for today. This has been Shimelis Marasa Gebremichael here at the UMD Media. Please do not forget to like and share our program and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow our programs through our other platforms as well in order to become the first to know what is going on in Ethiopia, the Horn, Africa, and the world in general. You can easily reach us via our email address newstips2020umd@gmail.com. Thank you for watching and have a good one.